So my wife found this little magazine the other day and just wanted to talk to y'all about this a little bit. It's fantasy and science fiction. And just so happened the first story that she turned to was The Finger by Ray Vukcevich. I just wanted to go ahead and read this little story to you guys and see what you think about this. Bobby wanted to practice it on his mother, but he knew her face would turn red, then purple, and he'd see all the veins pulsing in her head. Smoke would pour from her ears and nose. Her eyes would pinwheel, and sparks would fly. Her lips would disappear in a tight, mean line. She'd start vibrating and humming, and the top of her head would blow off like the lid of a steam kettle, and everything inside would run down her face, melting her until there'd be nothing left but a puddle of mom stuff. So Bobby told her he was going out instead. He let the rusty spring on the screen door have its way as he ran from the kitchen into the Arizona sunshine and summer bug noise, and he was almost out of sight when he heard the satisfying bang that made all the peacocks scream. Bobby lazed on down the street. Main Street. The only street. A dirt road, really, kicking rocks and looking for devil's horns. Swarms of summertime flies buzzed around his head. He pulled at his jeans and the shorts riding up in the crack of his butt. He kept an eye out for whirlwinds to stand in as he practiced flipping birds, the middle finger of his right hand sticking out like the blade of a switchblade knife. Do it once, then do it twice, then do it again. This was a necessary man-type skill his cousin Fat Edward, who was 13 and should know, had told him. Necessary for a G-man, Bobby thought, but never said, because that's what he was going to be, a G-man, and maybe get himself a good golly molly, twist and shout. Yes, he flipped off the sky, and the sky said, "Hey." Bobby tapped his head to see a man in a cage. The cage hung from a high branch of the biggest oak tree around, jail tree. Everyone called the prisoner Robert. Everyone knew he liked to drink whiskey and pinch the bottoms of bar girls. Bobby flipped him off. Robert held the bars of the cage with both hands and glared down at Bobby. "Don't do that, Bobby B." "That's not my name," Bobby said, and held up his fist and triggered his finger again. Just when his middle finger snapped into position, he jabbed at Robert with his whole hand. A nice bit of style, Bobby thought. "I told you not to do that," Robert yelled. He pumped his legs and the cage swung on its rope. Bobby showed him his bird again. Robert had gotten the cage going around in a circle, and now he crashed it against the trunk of the oak tree. "You just wait till I get out of here." Bobby flipped him off again, and then as Robert slumped to the floor of the cave and broke into tears, Bobby ran off down Main Street. What was it about this gesture, he wondered, that it could make a grown man cry? Such power and magic. It was like when he'd called his cousin Edward a cocksucker, a term he'd gotten from Edward in the first place. Edwards had chased him around and around the barn, yelling that he'd kill him if he ever got his hands around Bobby's pussy neck. Cats and chickens. It didn't make a lot of sense. There was something impotent and dirty about sucking on roosters, but Bobby couldn't figure out what it could be. Cock robbing, or maybe something to do with devil worship. He'd heard they liked to kill things and drink blood, or maybe geeks, the way Edward said they liked to bite the heads off chickens and suck the eggs up through the bleeding top. But wouldn't that make it hen sucking? Bobby discovered a new refinement. As the middle finger of his right hand snicked out, he slapped the whole hand into his left palm, making a sharp smack that scared birds from the rooftops and set a snake to rattling right there in the middle of the road in front of him. Coiled, pastel pink and blue and orange and green, the duck-billed rattlesnake snarled, showing its daffy little needle-sharp teeth. It swept its head left and right, keeping its bright eyes on Bobby. The snake's dry rattle was so fast Bobby couldn't see the tail move. He stopped in his tracks and flipped off the snake. The snake froze like it couldn't believe its eyes, then picked up its rattle twice as fast and hard as before. It hissed and spit at Bobby, who jumped to the side and jabbed his middle finger into the air, yelled, "Yah!" then jumped again. The snake twisted around to follow Bobby, who kept moving and yelling and flipping it off. Just as Bobby thought he'd finally gotten the snake to knot itself, a car came barreling out of nowhere and honking his horn like crazy. Bobby jumped out of the way, and the car ran over the snake, squashed it flat. "No fair," Bobby yelled, and when old Mr. Klein poked his head out of the side window to look back and shake his fist at Bobby, Bobby flipped the bird at him. Mr. Klein braked hard, and the car skidded sideways and crashed into the bait and tackle shop. Bobby hurried on down Main Street. Mrs. Stokes stood hugging a brown paper bag on the steps of the grocery store. "Don't slouch so, Bobby," she said. Bobby flipped her off. Miss Stokes collapsed like she'd suddenly been unplugged. Bobby jerked around like a gunfighter and flipped off the dime store, and the store exploded, spewing up electric chains, trains, and stuffed animals, comic books, and pieces of plastic airplane models. Bobby flipped off the bright white church on the corner, and it jumped into the air and then fell onto its side with a splintering crash and the sounds of breaking glass. Flipping fast and furious now, Bobby turned the little red schoolhouse into a big pile of little red bricks. Bobby flipped off the courthouse, and smoke filled its windows. The mayor ran out screaming, "Fire! Fire!" Downtown was beginning to look war-torn, worse for wear, maybe tornadoes struck. "You're not being very nice, Bobby," said the West Witch. "Ugliest sin," his father called her, where she sat on the boardwalk with her plastic bag of empty vegetable cans and bits of bright yarn and cork bottles of powders and potions. Bobby flipped her off. The witch's eyes got big, then she grinned, and Bobby could see she had no teeth. "Maybe you just need something sweet to suck on, a sweet tooth or two." She wiggled her eyebrows up and down at him, and sweetness filled his mouth. Chocolate. He backed away, sucking at his teeth. His front teeth, his chocolate teeth, and they were getting smaller fast, dissolving. The witch sat rocking and slapping her knees and laughing at him, and when he zapped her with the finger again, all he was able to do was knock off her ragged bonnet, and that just seemed to make her laugh harder. Bobby swallowed the last of his chocolate and ran on down the street, tonguing the space where his top front teeth had been. He stopped in front of the still-standing hardware store where he knew there was a mirror in the window. He was so much older now, growing up before his very eyes. He watched in dismay as his new teeth came in. He was a chipmunk. How could he be a G-man if he looked like a big chipmunk? No, a beaver. Bobby the beaver. There was something about beavers, too, something that put a sly smile on Edward's face. He'd never figure it out in time. "You're always a day late and $1 short," his father liked to say. Bobby flipped off the hardware store, reducing it to a pile of lumber and nails, tools and electrical parts, pipes and toilet fixtures. He let his shoulders slump, deliberate bad posture, and slouched on down the smoky street, getting bigger, stumbling into adolescence, feeling mean and shooting. "I meant to do that," glances around whenever he tripped over his own feet, kicking the town's rubble out of his way, taking time to flip off the country deputy and send his car tumbling with the tumbleweeds. Stinking black leather jacket and dirty jeans, torn basketball shoes, flat top, a cool fool coming up on Molly, the East Witch, as beautiful as the other one was ugly, saying, "Hey, baby," the once over for this one in her tight purple skirt and lacy white deep V blouse, brown and white shoes and Bobby socks. Once over was not enough, so the twice over. Her dog, a blind lab, sat by her side, giving Bobby the eye, an Elvis sneer on its lips and a little rumbling growl coming from somewhere deep inside. "Keep your eyes to yourself, Bobby B," Molly said. So what could he do but flip her off? She narrowed her eyes and said, "All right, for you, Bobby. You asked for it." She raised an eyebrow. What was it, he wondered, with these women in their eyebrows? Something pulled his eyes closed, and when he touched his face, he discovered that his eyelashes had grown long and heavy, so long, in fact, that they fell to his chest. He had to take a handful of lashes in each hand and pull them up and away from his eyes before he could see Molly standing there, smirking with one hand on a cocked hip and a cigarette in the other. She blew a smoky kiss his way. "I don't suppose you'd let me shine my G-Man flashlight in your face?" Bobby asked. "JC doesn't like that kind of talk, Bobby." She put her hand on the dog's head. "You named your dog after Jesus Christ?" "No, after Joseph Campbell." Like that was his cue, the dog jumped up, circled around young Bobby B, and bit him in the seat of the pants. Bobby dropped his eyelashes, but he could still see the sudden light. Teen epiphany. He was seized by a sudden need to rip off his clothes, run into the woods, and beat on a drum until his father came down out of the trees. He turned and shouldered his way through the ragged refugees toward the end of Main Street and the wilderness beyond. Just outside the remains of town, Edward jumped up from behind a big acatillo and flipped Bobby off with both hands while doing a shimmy like he had a tail to wag. "Take that, beaver face," he shouted. "Same to you," Bobby grinned and flipped Edward off so hard his cousin's ears were pinned back. "All right," Edward slugged Bobby in the shoulder, and the two of them walked on. And as they walked, guys popped up from behind cacti to take pot shots with that one-finger salute. Snick, snick, like a running gun battle, but Bobby and Edward were too fast, and the vanquished soon fell in in behind them, and by the time the sun had set, a society of men had formed. They built a fire. They killed and cooked some rabbits. The moon soon gave them the cold shoulder. Coyotes sang. Backslapping, spitting, and farting, the men squatted with their drums in a circle around Bobby, who would soon exclaim, "Sweet G, manly poetry." Man, that's almost too much for my head to manage. Just wondering what all y'all might think about that. Comment, like, subscribe, and please just give me some reaction videos on this insanity here. Next time we'll talk to y'all about Shooting Babies by Jeff Bredenberg.